I'm going to step off the limb now.
On July 16, 1969, the United States sent its first crew to land on the moon. The mission was called Apollo 11.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
After World War II, there was a Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. This was a competition to see who was the most powerful nation. One of the things they competed for was sending satellites and people into space, and this was called the space race. On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first artificial Earth satellite, named Sputnik 1. This caused a panic among the people and the leaders in the United States who feared that the Soviet Union was more advanced in space technology, which would then lead to more world power. On May 25, 1961, the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, delivered a special message to the American people. He set the goal to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of the decade.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
NASA, which stands for National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was founded in 1958 by the federal government and President Dwight D. Eisenhower. This is where the Apollo program began, along with previous missions, all with the goal of winning the space race. The barrier at that point was that no one knew how to make it happen. NASA didn't let that stop them. They set out to find the brightest, most recent PhD graduates from MIT, recruited them, and put them to work on figuring out how to make a landing on the moon. After some time, they realized that in order for this to work, they would need new technology, something that would allow them to take a huge room-sized computer and make it small enough to fit in a spacecraft. They finally found what they were looking for in the integrated circuit, which would later become the microchip. Apollo 4 and 5 were both uncrewed Earth orbit missions. Apollo 4 tested all aspects of the Saturn V launch vehicle, and Apollo 5 was the first test flight of the lunar module. Apollo 7 was the first crewed flight. It was an Earth orbiting mission with Walter Schirra, Jr., Don Isley, and Walter Cunningham. Apollo 8 was the first crewed mission to actually orbit the moon. Among the crew were Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders. This was a huge test of NASA's space program because they had never sent someone so far to go completely around the moon. Apollo 9 was the first crewed flight with the lunar module, which was the portion of the Apollo spacecraft meant to land on the moon's surface with the crew in later missions. Apollo 10 was another crewed lunar mission. It was the last test before the actual lunar landing. On July 16, 1969, the Apollo 11 launched from Cape Kennedy in Florida. The mission was to fulfill President Kennedy's challenge, land a crew on the moon and return them safely back to Earth. Included in the crew were Commander Neil Armstrong, Command Module Pilot Michael Collins, and Lunar Module Pilot Edwin Buzz Aldrin. On July 20th, President Kennedy's goal was realized when Neil Armstrong became the first human being to set foot on the moon's surface. All this was captured on video with an estimated 650 million people watching all over the world. Everyone was mesmerized by the accomplishment as they heard those unforgettable words. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Finally, the United States surpassed the Soviets in the space race. This was the ultimate challenge, and it was met because of John F. Kennedy, the geniuses at Mission Control in Houston, Texas, and the brave Apollo 11 crew. The Apollo program carried on, landing 5 more crews on the moon: Apollo 12, Apollo 14, Apollo 15, Apollo 16, and Apollo 17. Each mission brought samples of the moon back to Earth. Scientists were able to study these samples and find further information about both space and our own planet Earth. The Apollo space program was an important event in our history, and it broke many barriers. As a result, we became more powerful in technology and started to lead the world in more inventions and discoveries. Without the success of the Apollo space program, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today technologically. Basel Hero, author of the book The Mission of a Lifetime, told CNN Business, "Without Apollo, I don't think the computer revolution would have happened as quickly and on the same trajectory. It would have taken an extra 10 or 20 years. Who knows what the future holds for us as a nation and as a human race? The doors are wide open for new adventures and discoveries on other planets." There is no doubt the Apollo missions paved the way, opening our imaginations, our hearts, and our wildest dreams. They helped us look toward the future and gave us a perspective of our own world that we had never seen before.
We are now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.